If any media sources can help me to get my story out there, to help me find my son that I have full rights to, please help me.
Divorced and I'm assuming went on with your life. When did you learn that he was an accused serial killer? Serial killer. Serial killer.
Lobna Yakut's world shattered. She sat there, her body trembling, unable to comprehend the gravity of what she had just seen. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of her shattered reality. A familiar face stared back at her from the television screen. It was a face she had once loved, a face she had trusted. It was Karim, her ex-husband, the man she had shared her life with, the father of her child. But he wasn't just Karim anymore, he was someone else entirely.
So basically the serial killer, he tried to kill me many times, he tried to kill my sister many times, and then he got caught with 3 bodies in his apartment in a torture chamber. And he's very known in Egypt and the Arab world. And this was recent, this was like 7 months ago. So he had kidnapped my son from me 3 years ago. And anytime I tried to get him, he would basically try to kill me and try to ruin my life and try to find me. Like, I'd be at places and he'd just show up and I'd have to run. And it was just a flippin' nightmare. So finally, when he got caught this May, end of May, they locked him up. He's gonna get hung very soon, hopefully. But the problem is, whenever he got locked up, he told the police that I was dead, so his mom took my son, and till now it's been 7 months. I haven't seen my son, I haven't heard from my son. She's kidnapped him. I filed all police papers, all court papers. I have full custody. I have educational custody. I have every single right. I just could not find this woman. So I just need the English world to hear my story, because very soon I'm going to be on a big channel, like something very big that we all have in our house. And you're going to hear my story, but I really hope before that happens, I get my son back, which I'm dying, honestly. I'm like dying to see him. I'm dying to talk to him again. I just need as much exposure as possible. And this lady might be in America, she might be still in Egypt, but who knows? Who knows? I need to find her, and I need everyone's help as much as possible. If you go to my older videos, you'll find pictures of my son. I have put pictures of her there. So if you want to take a look, and if anyone can help me,
if any media sources can help me to get my story out there, to help me find my son that I have full rights to, please help me.
Someone she couldn't recognize. He was the new Cairo serial killer, her Karim. The man she had once loved was now a monster in the eyes of the world. The father of her child, the man who had once held their baby in his arms, who had promised to protect them. A cold dread gripped her heart. She felt as if the ground beneath her had vanished, leaving her in a free fall of despair.
How do you say this word? Exquisite.
Exquisite.
It means very pretty. And this one? Ecstatic.
Ecstatic.
It means very happy. I'll give this one a shot.
The news reverberated through her. Each word, each detail was like a dagger to her soul. Each horrifying detail chipped away at her sanity. She couldn't believe that the man she had once known could be capable of such atrocities.
Say, I don't get it. Don't say, I'm sorry. Say, I apologize.
He preyed on young women just like her. Women who were vulnerable, who trusted too easily. He tortured them, ended their lives brutally. The thought of his cruelty made her skin crawl.
Gotta. I gotta go.
Out of.
Outa. I'm out of time.
A wave of nausea swept over her. She felt sick to her stomach, unable to process the horror of it all. Lobna thought back to their life together. The moments of happiness, the laughter, the love they had shared. The subtle manipulations, the simmering rage beneath his calm facade. She had seen glimpses of it, but had always brushed it aside. It all clicked into place, forming a terrifying picture. The signs had been there all along, but she had been too blind to see them.
Speak English faster.
Give me.
Gimme. Gimme that back.
Let me.
Let me have something.
Want to.
Wanna. I wanna go home.
She had been living with a monster. The realization was too much to bear. She felt a crushing weight on her chest, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. How could she have been so blind? How could she have let this happen? The questions swirled in her mind, but there were no answers. Only the cold, hard truth that the man she had once loved was a monster. Lobna met Karim in university. It was a time of new beginnings, filled with excitement and endless possibilities. They were both young, ambitious, and ready to take on the world. Their paths crossed in a serendipitous moment, and from that day forward their lives were intertwined. He was charming, attentive, almost too perfect. Karim had a way of making everyone around him feel special, especially Lobna. His smile could light up a room, and his words were always carefully chosen to make her feel cherished and adored. It was as if he had been crafted from her dreams. He swept her off her feet, and they married young. Their wedding was a fairy tale, a day filled with love, laughter, and promises of a bright future. Friends and family gathered to celebrate their union, and Lobna felt like the luckiest woman in the world. They were inseparable, and their love seemed unbreakable. But the man she married began to change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Karim's demeanor shifted. The warmth in his eyes began to fade, replaced by a cold, calculating gaze. The man who once showered her with affection now seemed distant and preoccupied. The charming facade cracked, revealing a dark and possessive underbelly. Karim's true nature began to surface, and it was nothing like the man Lobna had fallen in love with. His possessiveness grew, and he became increasingly controlling, monitoring her every move and questioning her every decision. His control grew tighter, like a python, slowly constricting its prey. Lobna felt suffocated, trapped in a relationship that was becoming more and more oppressive. The freedom she once enjoyed was now a distant memory, replaced by a constant sense of dread and anxiety. He isolated her from friends and family. Karim's tactics were insidious, gradually cutting Lobna off from the people who cared about her. She found herself increasingly alone, with no one to turn to for support or comfort. The walls of their home became a prison, and Lobna felt like a prisoner in her own life. He belittled her, chipped away at her self-worth. Then came the blows. Karim's words were like daggers, each one designed to wound and diminish her. He made her feel worthless, convincing her that she was nothing without him. And then the verbal abuse escalated to physical violence, shattering any remaining illusions of safety. At first he was apologetic, begging for forgiveness. Karim would weep and plead, promising that it would never happen again. He swore that he loved her, that he couldn't live without her, and for a while Lobna believed him, hoping that the man she loved would return. But the violence became routine, a terrifying cycle. Lobna lived in fear, the apologies became hollow, and the promises were always broken. Each day was a new nightmare, with Lobna never knowing what would set Karim off. The fear was constant, a shadow that loomed over every moment of her life. Fear for herself, fear for their son, Zayn. Lobna's terror extended beyond her own safety. She worried constantly about their young son, Zayn, and the impact Karim's behavior would have on him. She knew that she had to protect him, to shield him from the monster that Karim had become. She knew she had to escape. The realization dawned on her slowly, but with increasing clarity. Lobna understood that staying with Karim was no longer an option. She had to find a way out, for her sake and for Zayn's. The thought of leaving was terrifying, but the thought of staying was even worse. She had to protect her child from the monster that shared their home. With a newfound determination, Lobna began to make plans. She reached out to the few friends she had left, seeking their help and support. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it. For Zayn and for herself, she would find the strength to break free. The opportunity came unexpectedly. Karim was away on a business trip. Lobna knew this was her chance. She packed a small bag, just the essentials. She took Zayn in her arms, his innocent eyes filled with confusion. They fled into the night, leaving behind the life she knew. She found refuge at a women's shelter, a safe haven from the storm that was her life. She changed their names, hoping to erase their past. She vowed to build a new life for Zayn, a life free from fear. News of the new Cairo serial killer spread like wildfire. Young women were disappearing, their bodies later found dumped in desolate areas around the city. The brutality of the murders sent chills down the spines of Cairo's residents. Fear permeated the streets. The police were baffled. The killer was meticulous, leaving no trace. The only clue was the pattern of the crimes, the chilling signature that linked them together. Each victim was found with a single red rose clutched in their hand. Lobna felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the news reports. The images on the screen were almost too much to bear, each one more horrifying than the last. She couldn't tear her eyes away, even though every fiber of her being wanted to look away, to pretend it wasn't real. The brutality of the crimes, the utter lack of remorse. It was as if the perpetrator had no soul, no conscience. The details were gruesome, each more shocking than the last. The news anchors spoke in hushed tones, their faces pale with the horror of what they were reporting. It resonated with the Karim she knew, the monster hiding behind a human mask. She had always sensed something was off, a darkness lurking beneath his charming exterior, but she had never imagined it could be this. The man she had loved, the father of her child, capable of such atrocities. Then came the news that shattered her world. The words seemed to echo in her mind, each one a hammer blow to her heart. She felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under her, leaving her in freefall. The police finally had a suspect in custody. The relief was short-lived, replaced almost immediately by a new, more terrible fear. Who could it be? Who was capable of such evil? And they released his image. The moment she saw it, her heart stopped. It was a face she knew all too well, a face she had once loved. It was Karim, her Karim, the man she had shared her life with, the man she had trusted. The realization hit her like a physical blow, leaving her gasping for breath. The father of her child, the man who had once been her whole world. She looked at the family photo on the mantel. The happy face is now a cruel mockery of the truth. A wave of nausea washed over her. She stumbled to the bathroom, barely making it in time. The room spun around her, the walls closing in. She clung to the sink, trying to steady herself. She knew deep down that it was him. She had always known, on some level, but had never wanted to admit it. The truth was too painful, too devastating. The way he looked at the camera, the cold, dead eyes, it was the same look he had given her so many times, a look that had always sent a shiver down her spine. Now she understood why. It was the same look he gave her when he raised his hand. The memory came flooding back, the fear, the pain. She had tried to forget, to move on, but now it was all coming back. The nightmare she had lived through was far from over. Panic surged through Lobna. If Karim was the killer, where was Zayn? Had he taken him? Was he safe? A million questions swirled in her mind, each more terrifying than the last. She had to find her son. She contacted the police, her voice trembling with fear. They assured her they were doing everything they could to locate Zayn. But days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of him. Hope started to dwindle, replaced by a gnawing dread. The police investigation continued. They uncovered a storage unit rented under Karim's name. Inside, they found a treasure trove of evidence linking him to the murders. And amongst the grisly findings, a glimmer of hope. A worn-out teddy bear, similar to one Zayn owned, lying amidst a pile of clothes. A child's drawing, brightly colored crayons depicting a house, a tree, and a smiling sun. Underneath, in a child's handwriting, the words, "Me and Baba." Zayn was alive. He had been there. The news sparked a renewed sense of hope in Lobna's heart. Her son was out there, somewhere, and she would find him. The weeks that followed were a blur of police interviews, therapy sessions, and sleepless nights. The trauma of her past, the horror of Karim's crimes, and the constant worry for Zayn weighed heavily on Lobna. The world felt surreal, a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The fear was always there, lurking in the shadows. The fear that Karim would escape, that he would come for her for Zayn. But amidst the fear, a steely resolve was growing. She would not be a victim. She would find her son. She would survive. Years have passed, years filled with heartache, frustration, and a relentless search for Zayn. Lobna has dedicated her life to finding her son, driven by an unbreakable bond and the unwavering belief that he is out there, somewhere. She travels tirelessly, following every lead, chasing every whisper of information. She speaks at conferences, raising awareness for missing children. She will never give up. She will never lose hope, because a mother's love knows no bounds, and Lobna's love for Zayn is her guiding light, her beacon of hope in the darkest of nights.